what happens if I gain weight after my liposuction procedure? Unfortunately, this is a very common reality. And we can talk about fat regrowth from multiple perspectives, but a few basic points were highlighted in an article 3 or 4 years ago that was abstracted in Medscape, when an article by a group of Brazilian doctors well documented that a high percentage of the fat that people accumulate after an abdominal liposuction procedure comes out to be visceral fat and not the superficial fat that we can do anything about with liposuction. What do I mean by visceral fat? I prefer the term omental fat, but that's not popular in the literature. Deep fat is a better description, but suffice it to say, the fat that's deep inside the abdomen, well below where we can reach with our liposuction cannulas. So a high percentage of the fat that recurs if you gain weight after a procedure is not the kind of fat we can fix with liposuction. But the story doesn't end there. It's been my observation when patients come in 3 or 4 years after a procedure and they gain 10 or 12 pounds, frequently they'll want to say, oh, look at what you missed. This is a piece you left. You want to do a touch-up. That's the popular term. But suffice it to say, fat can recur in the areas where you removed it from. And it often does so in an uneven distribution, and it doesn't look the way fat, when Mother Nature put it there, looked before. So yes, it can recur to some extent in the areas where it was removed from. Much more commonly, we see that the fat develops in the areas contiguous to where we work most aggressively in removing the fat during the initial liposuction procedure. And I call it so-called contour zones, where you don't want to do liposuction in such a way that it's obvious where you start and where you stop. You want nice, smooth transitions between the areas where you work and where you don't work. In those zones where you left more fat because you wanted it to contour, you can get recurrence of fat years later when people gain weight. And it looks ugly sometimes, but it tends to be almost like a rope around or a frame surrounding the area where you were most successful in aggressively removing fat. So that's another area where the fat occurs in addition to the deep omental or visceral fat. That fat in those contiguous zones, by and large, is remediable with liposuction. But please don't call that a touch-up. This is a whole new procedure. And that concept of a touch-up is what sometimes challenges our friendships. Now, another reality is fat can occur in totally different areas. And our observations include mostly when we do an abdominal procedure, at least 40% of menstruating age women, I don't see this in the older ladies, but in the younger women, they'll get bigger breasts. That's at least 40, and I think that number is probably low. But we've been able to actually measure up to 40% in looking at old charts of people who, when they came in for follow-up visits, actually had an increase in their breast size. And it can be significant, sometimes 2 or 3 cup sizes. Another area, and we have an illustration of this example, is the thighs. Frequently, when people have had an aggressive abdominal procedure, they put on a few pounds, their thighs get much bigger. So it is important to stress that just because you have a nice waistline now, doesn't mean you can go back to eating the way you ate and living the way you lived before you had your body contouring procedure. Lifestyle changes are very important, and you need to consider any procedure you have where you have liposuction or other investments in improving your appearance as an investment in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, maintaining the lifestyle to maintain the good results is like adding interest on money you put in the bank. So anyway, but for now, I want to thank you for your attention. We know that you have alternatives for your sources of information, but I thank you for making a wise choice.